Hey, welcome to the Author Nation State of the Nation podcast. Now, this one's going to be a little special because we're talking to the readers in the room. We love you. You're very important to us. And today, Chelle and Joe are going to be talking with Eryka Parker. She's an author and editor, and she's going to be discussing the Cleveland writing scene as well as things like developmental edits and book coaches. You're going to want to tune in for this, so stick around.
All right, welcome back to Author Nation, still in Cleveland.
We're never leaving Cleveland.
Yeah.
The weather's great.
Yeah, we've got perfect weather.
It's gorgeous.
If you tell us how bad it is here most of the time, but they're putting on a good show for us.
And they've got great coffee. Yeah, it's been nice.
So today we've got Chelle, our program manager. She's back on to share with us what she learned at CEX.
It would take an entire week.
I know. And we have Eryka Parker here, a local author who's here to kind of break down the local community for us and share a bit about her and what you learned while you were at CEX.
Yes, can't wait.
Let's start out, tell us about you and writing in Cleveland and all the crazy stuff that makes up your career.
Sure. So born and raised in Cleveland. So been here my entire life. It has been the weather. If we could just get the weather a little
You're
nicer.
fooling us this week.
Yeah.
You're fooling us this
Yeah,
week.
that's a Midwest
I don't
thing.
know.
It's the same thing with Chicago, right?
I was going to say, I need you guys to stay so we can stay in the 70s. But I've been here my whole life. I love it here. Northeast Ohio is a very welcoming neighborhood. It's a small, small world. Everyone knows each other. It's a very supportive space. Particularly as a writer, there's a lot of writing programs available for Cleveland authors. One of them is Literary Cleveland. It is an organization, nonprofit that focuses on indie authors, focuses on poets, and builds community. There's lots of events here and a lot of support, and a lot of great talent has come out of Cleveland because of Literary Cleveland.
Wow. Well, we're last night we had the Story Wars people here, so you guys have got some crazy stuff going on.
Oh yeah, for
and we're
sure.
Bringing that to the nation.
That's one of the most creative concepts I've seen regarding writing in a long time. And the fact that he just came up with that and it's just taken off and the support he's getting, huge. I love it.
I think it's also amazing that he surrounded himself with fellow crazy people. That helps, right?
Oh, yeah.
Your nation, your tribe.
Were we keeping you
Is
up
your
last night?
No.
No. We couldn't do that because if we have half as much fun with Story Wars as we had yesterday on that podcast, they're hilarious.
They are hilarious. I just enjoyed listening to them beforehand. We talked about ghosts, we talked about neighborhoods, we talked about ice cream. It was a cool hang.
Yeah.
I want to move here just for that now too, like the weather and Story Wars and Eryka.
Yeah.
Did I just move to Cleveland?
I think you really did.
Yeah.
And there's space for you here.
I like that.
Cleveland, the new Austin.
Wow. Yeah, maybe. I love my Austin.
So we interrupted you. Sorry. That'll happen on the show.
Oh, yeah.
No worries. I'm also board treasurer for Great Lakes Fiction Writers. So that's a group that is also all about community. We support independent authors, traditionally published authors. We have events. We have holiday parties. We're having a conference in August. So we really have a lot of resources available for those that want that dream of becoming an author. A lot more than what I saw growing up. I didn't see this growing up. So it's really become a trend and hopefully a lifestyle to support those that are looking to get published.
And you're part of that trend though too, because you teach.
Yes.
You give back, right? So you're very, very much part of that.
I love workshops. I love meeting people that love the craft of writing. There is so much that as we all know, there's so much that goes into publishing and writing a book that it can become overwhelming. And because of people like you starting a wonderful magazine and because of people like you that have a platform to show us how it's done, it takes a village and you guys are part of my village. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But we need that.
What got you into this whole thing? Clearly you're involved. You've been juggling a lot just this week with having kind of hosting us while we're in town and getting over to the show and what suckered you into this whole writing thing?
Oh my gosh, I have been suckered in since a very young age. I started really getting into reading around 8 9-ish. Beverly Cleary, like Ramona and Beezus, the Babysitters Club, Sweet Valley Twins, all of that. And I noticed that I just didn't see little girls that looked like me on the covers. And I was like, where are we? I know our stories need to be told. So as I continued reading and then started writing my own stories that starred people that looked like me, I said, well, wait a minute, I might actually be decent at this. So I continued writing until probably, my entire life, but I didn't do anything about it until probably about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
But I started a career in publishing and helping people get published because of that. So now I'm, I guess, partially a part of the process of people that have published their stories as a result of that. It's been great.
Yeah. So take a little twist here to the whole CX thing and talking about, clearly you like to level up your game, go to things like this, and then you go and you do it, and now your brain's melted.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Right?
It was a lot.
So CEX, I had gone through Jenny Nash's Author Accelerator program where I studied how to become a book coach, and it was a really rigorous program. It was great. So I thought I knew a little bit, I'm like, okay, I know a little bit about this. Oh my gosh, CEX really took it to the next level with some of that content that was there and the people that presented. Very knowledgeable team of people, very approachable. I was able to have conversations with them and network with them a little bit. But mostly it was like I learned the value of being able to have community and how big of a role that plays. And that's what I love about Author Nation, and what is happening with Author Nation is knowing that that community has to be there in order for you to be successful, because you can't do it alone. Yes, you write the book alone, but when it comes to putting it out into the world, you have to have community.
Oh, for sure. You got to observe a little bit this morning when you sat down, and like us getting together here at this, it was like after what we did in Austin, it was like, oh, we got to do more of these podcasts. So like we tried to find a podcast studio here, and there wasn't anything. And then we figured out with what we were doing with CEX and all the people we're going to have, well, we're going to need some more space. And then this house came up as a spot to do everything. But like the real value is what you saw at that kitchen table when we were kind of getting ready, is the team connecting, right? Like what the ideas that are coming up around Author Nation and how we're going to market. I'm sure you were hearing things you're like, I should probably be doing that. Right?
Absolutely.
Which is great. That's the whole idea, is like everyone should be looking at what we're doing, because not that it's all going to work, right? But we're trying things. Like we're like, oh, this is what we should be doing with this page so that we can get this type of audience, and things that we just learned at the show, and things not necessarily that somebody gave us the idea in a sense of like, oh, he did that and made a bunch of money, so we're going to just copy it. It's there's a problem that wasn't necessarily addressed right. How would we address it in a different way? And then we talk, and it's like, oh yeah, let's try that.
I think some of the beauty of it too is timing, right? Because some of the information that you hear, you've heard it before, but then the right setting, the right context, the right speaker, the right timing for you and your business, something clicks.
Yeah.
And you're able to distill that and synthesize that in a way that you weren't able to a year ago. So a year ago, I wasn't really thinking about email. I mean, I've always been thinking about email, but not the personal connection, not the connection to connection readership. And one of the common threads that I've heard this whole time, especially as we've all started to process how generative AI is going to affect us, is that artisanal connection with your reader, that connection. So I've been rethinking our entire email sequence. I've been rethinking our entire, how do we welcome our instructors to Author Nation? How do we craft, everything, right? How do we touch them? How do we give them information in a relatable way? It's just, yeah.
Yeah, when you care about that customer experience, it shows, and they value that. They're like, okay, if they care about me this much as I'm coming on and being onboarded into the brands, what are they going to do once I get there?
Yeah.
So having that care is so important. And that's what I've seen when you were brainstorming about that customer experience, like what are they going to get out of this? We want them to have actionable items that they can implement as a result of coming here. It's not just stuff, not the fluff and all of the things that we think we should have. It's actually having a formula that will allow them to be able to get those results they're looking for.
For sure, for sure. So kind of on that same tangent, now as, a service provider, somebody, you've got clients that you've been coaching and you just went to the show, like what's something that you're going to be really rethinking or applying when you're helping others with their book journey?
I think the biggest thing that one of my biggest takeaways that I had was mostly about, wow, it's just so much. You're making me choose one.
No, you could. We got time.
Oh my goodness.
Start a list.
Right. I think the biggest thing for me was just the communication. So I am not big on social media. That is not my jam. I've tried it. I'm just so self-conscious. I think about how I show up. I'm really big on like social cues and nonverbal communication. There's none of that with social media. You're just kind of just posting and seeing what sticks sometimes. So I think that I owe my audience more of a presence on social media. Like I need to tell them who I am. I need to let them know what I stand for, my core values and things of that nature. I haven't been doing that. So, and that's a disservice, right? That's not giving them enough information for them to be able to make that decision. So showing up more consistently and being more authentic in the way that I show up, not, oh, this sounds nice. This is nice and corporate. No, I need to show up as who I am so that when they, work with me, they know, okay, this is on brand with what Eryka has put out.
Yeah.
Like I expected this experience, not, oh, wow, she's super silly and funny, but she's not showing up that way in social media. She's very dry and very corporate. So, yeah.
That's so important because I think that when we're in a world where it's so easy to get led down that path of me being what the latest trend says is trending versus like, no, I'm going to stay on brand. This is my brand. We're kind of joking before, it being
right,
resistant, it filters out the negative as well as brings the positive. It's just trusting that, right? Really knowing that it's going to work. It might take longer than I'd like it to, but it will work.
Yeah. There were 3 sessions yesterday that sort of reinforced that. One was Jay Klaus's session where he talked about if you write. If you want a podcast. If you want to be on video, be on video. You don't have to do all the things. In fact, it's detrimental if you do because you don't show up authentically. If you are a podcaster, but you're trying to be on video, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to feel comfortable doing it. So pick your lane that you like and that you're good at and then show up authentically. Katie Bartlett did a session on posting less on social media. And she talked about how you can use your long form content to be authentic and you're repurposing your content. So you don't have to create like a bucket of new content every single day, which I think is really daunting to a lot of us that have to feed the algorithm, right? We have to respect the algorithm. The algorithm says to be successful, you have to do this. And if we get 2 likes, we're sad. Like it's tied to our personalities now for social media. But talked about how to repurpose that. And then Justin Welsh, where he talked about he didn't like to do this, so he doesn't do it now. And he just does the thing that he loves to do, which is his newsletter. So I think, those for me were big reinforcements, especially for our Author Nation attendees. I hope we can sort of impart that authenticity and that, do less, be happier, find your bliss, and still be successful.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think what kind of compounds the confusion is that you don't necessarily think about of the mediums you're choosing to work in, that you're going to, let's just take this from the content entrepreneur perspective. You've chosen the medium of books, right? This is a channel that you have to dedicate a bunch of energy into. But then you feel like, well, no, that's really not the one main channel. I got to go dedicate it to Instagram so that I can get this channel to work. And it's like, well, no, you probably should be thinking less about the Instagram and more about how you're delivering within that channel to the existing audience. And whether it's the number of books that come out or the quality of the books that come out, all that effort that may be going into that other stuff and not going into that is hurting in a compounded way, in my view. So I'm just, that's the thing I've been thinking about is like, I know we're trying to get the discovery engine going, but why am I giving, if you've got so much content creation juice, why am I giving it to those folks that they're not giving me what it's worth?
Right.
And they, secret deal here, they need us. Like they're all driven by content, right? That's a prisoner's dilemma, right? We think, well, if I'm not there, somebody else will be there, and then they'll get all the good stuff. And then we all stick around in the prison.
Yeah. We do.
And the gate is open.
Yeah, the gate is open. There's no guards.
Nobody's leaving.
The doors aren't locked. There's not.
It's not a rave. You can go.
True.
So, with what you've been doing with, you were kind of got off on another tangent there. Sorry. With you've been doing with your. Let me rephrase this. Yesterday when we were talking, you were talking about at the table, kind of what you've been working with some of your clients around developmental, and we were talking about some of the concerns we had as folks that have been in the industry about how little information there may have been on that part. There's lots of great information, but from the perspective of somebody like you who's looked at a lot of people's books and seen. It wouldn't matter if everyone got to find this on Instagram. When they find it, it's kind of broke. I want to go to like how somebody who's listening to this, maybe getting started, what are some of the key things that you've observed are kind of the obvious things as, developmentally in a book that get missed a lot?
So I will start with memoirs.
Okay.
So, wow, this is a heavy subject because there's so many. I would probably say about 50% of people that inquire with me have written a memoir in some way. So motivational memoir or something, or maybe a memoir self-help type of thing. So we all have a story to tell. But what makes it different, and things have been experienced before, right? Long before we were born, it's been done. What makes it different is because it's you that has gone through it, and you have a different viewpoint, and you have a different core values and a different background. So those things are all different. So that unique perspective that you have is what makes your story stand out. I always tell people, embrace who you are as a person and what you've been through and what you've learned along the way, and that is what shapes your memoir, right? But what's in it for me is always going to be what you need to consider when you're writing a book. So you tell your story, you've been through some things, and sometimes it's sad and sometimes it's really inspirational. But what's in it for the reader to continue reading? No matter how interesting your story is, it needs to be something in it for them to build that connection. So the developmental piece is where I come in and where I say, okay, great. You've been through these things, you've overcome. How did you overcome? Why didn't you give up? What did you learn along the way? What parts of you inside is what pushed you to be able to get through and persevere? And what did you take away from it? And how can your reader now apply those same life skills and lessons to what they're going through right now? This is, I think it's a universal language when you talk about, what you learned, how you applied it, or I didn't give up, or this inspired me to change in this way. Everyone can benefit from that. That's not something that is just unique to you. So you have to develop okay, I'm telling my story, right? First draft, I'm telling it to myself, right? Just me, my eyes only. Second draft, okay, so just think of it. First draft, you're kind of putting down the floor and the walls and the roof. Second draft, now I'm starting to put down the carpet. Maybe I'm putting a little paint up, things like that. And then third draft, I'm adding that furniture. I'm making this a livable space. So every draft has to kind of enhance in a way where you're thinking about that reader's experience. I need to get clear on what I'm telling first, and then I'm going to enhance it where they're going to draw something from it. It's not just going to be about me. Because if it's about you, welcome to your basement full of books. Welcome to your trunk of your car is full of books. You can't get the groceries in, right? So that's
your mom bought a copy.
Auntie and cousin.
Your mom bought a copy. You're a bestseller on your blog.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what makes it relatable, you don't have to be famous. You don't have to be a celebrity to sell your story.
Yeah.
Just make it relatable to your reader.
Yeah.
And that's where developmental editing comes in.
No, I love that. I think the idea of, always, you made me think of like books that I've read that have been engaging for me, in that it's usually whatever the, for lack of a better term, trauma is, or the thing that was the inciting incident for something that changed to the better, right? It's like, this thing happened to me that I learned from, that now I don't do these other things and my life is better, right?
Yes.
Like if it's just about the misery pool, like nobody cares. Like they think their misery pool is deeper.
I mean, sadly, that's true, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that some of the best ones I've read start with a compelling story, and there is a story in there. Like I remember reading Mel Robbins, and she was laying on her couch, turned the TV sideways, eating bonbons, and then she figured out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and now she gets up and does stuff. Like it's motivational. Like that's a relatable story. It was her sad trauma story, but there was something that I could glean out of it by the empathy from the story, but then the transformational thing that happened afterwards.
Yes, absolutely.
That's got to be hard as a developmental editor. Are you empathetic? Like, do you read things and just sort of squish with people? Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell people, oh, you should do this, this, and this, and it would be like, yeah.
So the way, Joe, you said no one cares. I say no one cares, but I say it in a developmental editorial letter. I have my clients take a personality assessment so I can learn how to deliver tough news. So I go and I get their MBTI, which is the Myers-Briggs, and I see, how do I communicate this? I use AI. I say, okay, this person is this MBTI. I'm this MBTI. This is what I want to say. I copy and paste my letter in there, and then it makes it nice. And I say, based on the way they prefer to communicate.
For those of you that are listening and not watching, my jaw is on the floor. I dropped. Like, that is genius.
I have been in clients' weddings. I have been invited to their kids' birthday parties. I have lifelong friends that are clients. 2 of my closest friends are former clients.
That is just
because I'm just the nice editor. I'm just the person that's not going to, because this is a part of you.
Right.
Your story is
Right.
you. Whether it's fiction, whatever it is, it's you. So I can't go and stomp all over your story. That's
a superpower, Eryka, because, there's probably people that have to hide afterwards or fake their deaths.
Well, you hear the horror stories of like, I don't like this editor but like the fact that you can tell them with that process you just described, it's like, oh, like I've figured out how you need to hear this in a way that's going to, like, the message is the message, right? Don't get the messenger
shot,
thought about. It's like, I need you to really spend your time with this message, because if it sinks in and you take it on board, it's the difference between good and great.
And how is it going to sink in if I'm too direct or I'm hurtful with my message? Yeah. It's not going to sink in.
Yeah.
I had one of my clients tell me, I saw all the red. I went to dinner with my husband. I came back and read it because it was just so much red. She was like, but you told me throughout the whole process you're going to see red on your manuscript. It doesn't mean you're not a good writer. It just means there's an opportunity to develop it into a little bit of a better or more relatable story. Mm-hmm. So I tell them in advance, because I saw the red and I was upset when my developmental editor went through my book. I was like, I'm not a good writer. I'm not good. I suck. Right. All the things started coming. No, that wasn't true, but I felt that way, and I was very defensive in the process. So knowing that as a writer, I can kind of fill those shoes and say, okay, I'm now across the table from a writer that's just like me. So how would I give them feedback in a hurtful way? That would be terrible.
Well, and you've got that feedback turned up to 11, because with novels, we pour our hearts and souls into novels, but it's not our personal story. There's probably bits and pieces of it, but with a memoir, like, that's their story. That's their lived story. That's their lived experience. And so if you're giving them edits, it immediately probably feels like criticism, and they get defensive. So the fact that you've been able to navigate that little prickly pear and got to it is, a superpower. That's amazing.
Thank
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I was just, when you think about it, like everything is a story we tell ourselves, right? Like, and now this is the story that they've been telling themselves, right? And you're getting an insight and they're like, well, what do you think? And it's like, there's no way it couldn't hurt. Like, and at some level, there's going to be sensitivities because this is the story. But what I wanted to touch on with you before we pivot to talking about your jobs, you're working together with Chelle and stuff. The whole idea of a developmental edit. So yesterday I met this guy at lunch and he started telling me about, what he was doing and you know how it is when you're around me. By the time I'm done, I've given you a business plan and I've got like the vision and
cocktail napkin.
Yeah. There's sponsorship of jets and the whole thing. So he was really.
He's not wrong. I was sitting there.
Yeah. So one of the things I said to him was like, you need to get a developmental editor if you've never done this before, because when people hire someone like you, it seems extremely expensive. They're not thinking about it. This isn't about a process for one book, right? Like if you do developmental editing right and you work with somebody it's actually coaching. This is going to help not this book, but all books. Like you're going to understand the stuff we were just talking about, and it becomes more muscle memory for you in future times, right? So
you are spot on. Oh my gosh.
It's like I think about this stuff.
Spot on. It is a one-time investment, 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And I aim to teach. I'm a teacher at heart. So I make sure that I'm outlining not only, I won't just say the sentence sets, right? I would say, hey, there might be a better way to word this, or the meaning was lost on me here. Walk me through what you meant and then consider revising. Or if it's fiction and there's a scene and there's not enough of an emotional response, or it's not realistic to me in my mind, I would tell you, hey, as a reader, because I'm reading it, I'm your reader. As a reader, this just didn't connect for me. It didn't convict. It didn't have the power. There's some options for you to be able to use body language, imagery, or more of an emotional response for me to really buy into this scene, especially if it's a pivotal scene, right? If it's that scene that you want to be remembered for, you can't fall short on that. But if you have an outside opinion as a reader, because I read 100 books a year, like most of it psychological thrillers, I love that, but some memoirs and some other things. But if it didn't convict me and move me, and this is what you're kind of laying your hat on, we have to rework that. So that's coaching.
Yeah, and your feedback is showing and not telling.
Right.
That's
always,
huge.
which is, oh my gosh, the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, showing and not telling. But I always tell people, and this is a tip for anyone listening that's a writer that writes fiction or even a memoir, think of yourself as a narrator of a play. So when the play starts and the main character comes in, the narrator of the play wouldn't say, Jimmy walked onto the stage, he took a seat in the chair, he lifted his hand to his head and wiped the sweat. Like, you wouldn't say that. You're only narrating at times where the words are needed. You should not be visible. I should not be able to read a book and say, oh, they're telling me this story. I should be immersed into the story. That's nonfiction or fiction. I should not even know that I'm reading. I should be like there. Yeah. Like I should see myself around. I should look around and be able to see myself there. So that's imagery, that's description, that's concise sentences. It's not that long drawn out soliloquy. It's getting to the point. It's short. It's varied lengths of sentences, long and short. It's all of the things together. So that's what a developmental editor helps you with. And then you grow as a writer.
Awesome. Speaking of developmental editing.
That's a great segue. It actually is pretty close.
How about, you guys are working together on the Author Nation programming. And talk about something that they turned in the 400,000 word epic fantasy, and now you have to get it down to a short story.
Yeah.
What's it been like for you with like now that we're actually launching programming and dealing with this, as well as having just been at a show and seeing somebody else and how they do programming?
Yeah. So I'll just talk a little bit about our process, what we've done. So we got 400 submissions, and as a committee, we went through and read them and ranked them, right, internally. Not on a scale, but just, was the title compelling? Was the description compelling? Do we want to hear this? Did we feel like it met the audience? Like, we went through all of them with a fine-tooth comb. And then from those sort of bubbled up. We want to know more. We want to know, yes, this meets the criteria. And then we've gone back and talked to a lot of folks about that. So yeah, that process, we've been doing this now for 4 months, going through all of them.
The interest was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And then I like the fact that, Chelle, you've had such an audience-centric focus, like not, let's get this big name to attract, people to come, but really, is this person delivering what the audience will want, what the attendees will want and find value in? That's been an amazing, that leadership has been great.
Wow. My boss is listening. I love that.
Yeah. Well, there's with whether it's been collectively on Slack or at places like this or us on calls, or there's conversations to just hey, we need people that can talk to this audience. We have a very diverse audience, not just in their backgrounds and their ethnicity and their religions, but in the fact that they're in different points in their career. Mm-hmm. And we're all on this place of, we don't know what's coming next, right? So how do you program for that?
Well, we program by asking. That's been the base. Look at that. You ask people what they need and then you give them what they need. It's so shocking, but it's so simple. And I think that the conversations that we've been having as a programming committee of 15 have sort of been a representation of the cross section, right? We have a diverse team because we have a diverse group of people. So, for example, we were talking about how much time do we need between sessions, and the women said we need 30 minutes, and the guys were saying, do we? We're like, yeah, we do. And it's not that anybody has it's just informing us as a collective of what things are needed and educating and then programming to that, right? So it's not that they wanted to go. It's that wasn't a thing that's on their radar. So that's the thing that we've tried to do, is share information with one another to be aware of the things that we want to see at this conference a little bit differently, not just with the programming, the logistics of the schedule, but with the programming itself. So we're talking about issues that might not have been talked about before, might be scary. We talk about generative AI. We talk about, why people of color have different book covers. Like, those are things that I've never understood or know about. But we need to have these conversations. Yeah. And so I'm excited to see these conversations that are going to start happening so that we can meet the needs of our audience.
Yeah. And some of this, just kind of from a bigger picture perspective, and my thinking is like some of the things like, you mentioned as a little girl not seeing you being represented on covers. Where my brain goes with this is that we could all have a panel and talk about that as an issue, or we could say, how do we help authors figure out the right covers for them and their brand and for the community they're trying to get? Because there's no place to go get that information.
Right.
There's no checklist for that. There's no, here's your 7 ways to making the perfect, diversity cover. Like, that's not the point. The point is like, how do we figure that out together?
Right. Those need to be industry-wide conversations. Yeah. Not niche conversations. Everybody needs to know how to do
well, and not just like, aren't we cool that we're talking about this? It's like, let's come up with some answers for people. It's like, we want to have covers that resonate in certain genres that nobody's thinking about, right?
Right.
Like that's an important thing. It's not just about like, oh, aren't we, civil that we talk about this and we're, do we get our, our diversity stars? No, that's not the point. The point is we're trying to figure out that's a market that people want to serve and they don't know how to serve it, right? There's a lot of little girls like you out there whose moms want them reading, they'll give you cold hard cash if your books are giving the right message to those little girls.
That's right.
You want to write to those little girls.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make that work? I know I just devolved it into a business process, but that's right, actually.
Yeah.
But that's hopefully what I can bring to that conversation.
That would be awesome and amazing. I think also like there's, as we know, the publishing world, there's just so much information now, and having a place where you can go and kind of sort things out and understand. Because I think the biggest part of it is just, yes, I know that I broke the rules with my book cover. It has a woman's face on it, and it's supposed to be romance, and there's no bare chest.
Yep.
And there, like the theme now is like a lot of like the animated covers. It's not animated. It's a woman's face. It looks like it's like contemporary, like fiction, women's fiction, but it's contemporary romance. But it's whatever you want it to be. It's my person will see that cover and they'll be drawn to it. I don't have to fit into those standards of that genre in order to attract the people that want to read it. And so I think that's another thing is like you don't have to stick to these trends that are going on in publishing.
Market.
Be true to yourself. If you know your author platform and your theme, just be true to who you are. And the people that need to find your book will find it.
Yeah. Well, there's an equilibrium you have to reach, right? Where it's like, you don't want to be just chasing the algorithm and it's like all my book covers are going to look like all the other book covers, but they do need to, psychologically trigger an observer in the marketing world pretty quickly, like, okay, this is contemporary romance. But then does it then tell me almost as quickly, this ain't like the other guys. This is what I've been looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because then what happens when your covers work, they won't be unique in 90 days. Right? Because the trend chasers will be like, oh, all Eryka's books are slamming because of her covers. And I write like she does, so I'm going to make my covers just like hers. The exact thing that AI gets accused of. It's what authors do. Right?
Oh, Joe.
I'm just here to make friends.
I know. And your shirt says it all.
Well, as we wrap up here, why don't you tell folks a little bit about you and where they can find you and if they're interested in working with you and where it's easy to connect and find out about your services.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. So my business is Legacy Book Coaching and Consulting. I launched it in 2021. The parent company is Lyrical Innovations. But in Legacy Book Coaching, we focus on just your story and getting you out there as you are and to help you attract your audience in that way. But we really build into the author brand and platform. We are led by a theme, is what I'm finding in my work in publishing. So even if you're nonfiction, you have a theme and you have core values and you have a way of expressing yourself that's unique to only you because it's what you believe in. It's your belief system. So when you find that particular book that you need that wasn't on the shelf and you're able to write that book for your audience, it draws in your people. So it's just all about honing into who you are as a person and making sure that you're able to represent yourself authentically. So that's what we like to promote with Legacy. I'm also, so that's legacybookcoaching.com and then also Legacy Book Coaching on Instagram. I'm also an author, as I mentioned, contemporary romance. Yep. It's under a pen name, Zaria L. Banks, and the book is Beauty Beheld. It recently won some awards with BookFest. And it's just about, and this is, we had spent the most time talking about this yesterday at CEX. I am so passionate about being authentic and being who you are. Mm-hmm. I was bullied as a child, as I'm sure most of us were, and I was teased for being myself. And so then I drew into kind of like this shell. In relationships, you really have to show up as to who you are, because if you try to show up as someone else, you're not going to always feel like you're being wholly loved for who you are. So that's what my books talk about, just showing up as you and finding that person that's going to love you for who you are.
Wow. Pretty profound thing to end on, but that you're being authentic. So let's wrap it up right there. Yeah. It's great having you on, Eryka.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for being a great host here.
Thank you.
Bye.